Imagine this. It's December 22nd, 1939. In British India, this one Friday means completely different things to different people. Some are celebrating, feeling a sense of relief almost.
While for others, it's a day causing real concern, a sign of divisions getting deeper and deeper.
Exactly. Today, we're diving into that specific moment, the Muslim League's Day of Deliverance. Our goal here is to unpack this really complex event. What was behind it? What actually happened leading up to it? And what were the reactions? Because they were incredibly varied. We want to get a sense of its lasting impact on that difficult road to partition.
Yeah, and to really get why this day mattered so much, we need to picture the scene. The political atmosphere back then in British India, it was tense, really high stakes, especially after the 1937 provincial elections and then, World War II starting up. It was volatile. Political lines were being drawn very sharply.
Okay, let's break that down. To understand the Day of Deliverance, we have to start with the political setup right before it. A big piece of that was the Government of India Act of 1935. This act brought in some self-rule, but the British still held the final say, didn't they?
Absolutely. Limited autonomy. And then came the 1937 elections based on that act.
And then the results were, well, pretty striking. The Indian National Congress scored what our sources call a sweeping victory. They formed governments in, 7 out of 11 provinces? Quite a mandate.
A huge mandate. And it led them to really push this idea that they were the national party representing everyone, aiming for a united, independent India.
Right. Now contrast that with the Muslim League. Their performance was, well, not great.
Not great at all, yeah. They only won a majority in one province.
And even in places with large Muslim populations like Punjab and Bengal, they didn't capture that many Muslim seats.
Which suggested, at that point anyway, that many Muslim voters were still thinking more locally, more provincially, not necessarily buying into the League's all-India vision just yet.
It's fascinating, though, how those election results, instead of maybe fostering unity, became what one source calls the parting of the ways.
Exactly. Congress was dominant, and the Muslim League felt, well, they felt sidelined, shut out of power sharing, basically. And that perception really damaged the relationship between them. The League felt its voice wasn't being heard, and that pushed them towards a different path.
So with that backdrop, things started getting even more heated.
Yeah.
Our sources talk about the period when Congress was in power, from 37 to 39, and the Muslim League alleging, and it's important we stress these are allegations from the League's perspective,
Right.
alleging discriminatory policies and even atrocities against Muslims. They argued this led to widespread alienation.
Sure.
These were definitely controversial claims, but absolutely central to the League's story.
And they were pretty specific allegations, too, weren't they?
Very specific. Take education. There was the Warda educational scheme, compulsory co-education, music, teaching that maybe all religions lead to salvation. This was under Gandhi's guidance. Then the Vidya Mandar scheme in Bihar and Orissa. Compulsory Hindi or Marathi rules about land donations for schools, even pressure, reportedly, to bow before Gandhi's picture.
And the League saw all this as pushing a kind of Hindu-centric, uni-nationalist culture, right? Sidelining Muslim identity.
Precisely. And beyond education, there were these really symbolic things. Congress declared the tricolor flag, the Tiranga, as the national flag.
Which is still India's flag today.
Yes. And the Bandi Mantram anthem as the national anthem. Now, that anthem comes from a novel, an Anma.
Which the League described as having an anti-Muslim context or meaning based on parts of the novel itself.
Right, and then the language issue promoting Hindi over Urdu in many places, that caused a lot of resentment, too.
And then there was the violence, communal violence. The sources mention figures like 57 communal riots, 11,100 casualties by mid-1939.
Grim numbers. Plus, the League alleged direct interference in religion bans on cow slaughter, stopping the azan, the call to prayer, noisy marches near mosques, even things like denying Muslims access to village wells.
It's really key to grasp how these allegations, whether entirely accurate or exaggerated, fueled this deep sense of insecurity among many Muslims, this idea of a Hindu mentality taking over. Congress obviously pushed back on many of these claims, but the perception of unfair treatment was incredibly powerful politically.
And the League documented all this, didn't they, in reports?
Yes. The Pirpur Report in 1938 and the Sharif Report, these were compiled specifically to list these alleged cruelties and anti-Muslim bias. They essentially formalized the grievances. And these reports became crucial tools to argue for and eventually demand partition. They built the case piece by piece.
So tensions are already sky high. What tips things over the edge towards this day of deliverance?
Well, the big global event, World War II. That really changed everything.
How so?
On September 3rd, 1939, the Viceroy, Lord Linlithgow, just declared India was at war with Germany, alongside Britain.
Just like that, without asking Indian leaders.
Pretty much, without duly consulting Indians, as the sources put it.
And Congress wasn't happy about that.
Not at all. They saw it as completely undermining any claim to self-rule, a total disregard for Indian opinion.
So what do?
In protest, the Congress Working Committee called on all its ministries and the provinces to resign. And they did. By October 22nd, 1939, they were all out.
Wow, okay, so Congress just walks away from governing large parts of India.
Exactly. And this mass resignation creates this huge political vacuum.
The opportunity, perhaps.
A massive opportunity for the Muslim League. Suddenly, their main rival is off the field, so to speak. Their aim became pretty clear. Use this moment to really hammer home that negative image of Congress rule, highlight all those alleged grievances we talked about, the supposed plight of Muslims.
Now, so the stage was set for Jinnah's next move.
Perfectly set.
And that move came on December 2nd, 1939. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the leader of the League, he makes this very public call. He said, and I'm quoting here, "I wish the Muslims all over India to observe Friday, 22 December, as the day of deliverance and thanksgiving, as a mark of relief that the Congress regime has, at last, ceased to function."
Quite a statement. Deliverance. Thanksgiving. Strong words.
And the day was observed, as planned. The League organized gatherings, prayers.
But it wasn't just the Muslim League, was it? That's quite telling.
No, it wasn't. Other groups joined in. The All India Depressed Classes Association, the Independent Labour Party, even prominent figures like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar.
A major leader for the Dalits, the untouchables?
Yes, and E.V. Ramasamy, or Biharyar, from the Justice Party down south, representing non-Brahmin movements.
So it tapped into a broader discontent with Congress rule, even if the reasons were different for each group.
Definitely. But the reactions were, as you'd expect, immediate and really divided.
Congress was furious, naturally. Gandhi appealed directly to Jinnah, asking him not to go through with it, seeing how divisive it would be.
And Nehru, he offered to actually investigate the League's allegations of bias, right?
Yeah.
Try to bridge the gap.
He did. He offered dialogue. But the League was pretty adamant by this point. They insisted they were the sole representatives of India's Muslims.
Which Nehru couldn't accept, given how many Muslims were active members of Congress itself.
Exactly. So those talks stalled. Even senior Congress figures who were Muslim, like Abul Kalam Azad, publicly disapproved of the Day of Deliverance. It showed splits even within communities.
So this Day of Deliverance, it wasn't just a one-off protest. It feels like a real turning point in that bigger story leading towards partition.
Oh, absolutely. It gave a huge boost to the idea of Muslim nationalism. It made the concept of a separate state seem more popular, more necessary to many.
And this ties into how Jinnah's own thinking was evolving, especially after that 1937 election setback.
Yes. Our sources show him increasingly using Islamic language and symbols to define a distinct Muslim national identity. He started really pushing his two nations theory, challenging the whole idea of a single Indian nation.
He argued Hindus and Muslims were fundamentally different, didn't he?
He did, famously saying things like they belong to two different religious philosophies, social customs, literatures, that they didn't intermarry or eat together. Two different civilizations, he called them, based on conflicting ideas.
He even said their outlooks on life were different heroes, different histories, where one side's hero might be the other's enemy. Powerful rhetoric.
Incredibly powerful. And it wasn't just about religion in a narrow sense. He broadened it out. In a letter to Gandhi in 1944, he listed all sorts of cultural differences. Language, architecture, naming conventions, laws, morals, traditions, even calendars and history. Basically saying, we have our own distinct way of looking at everything.
So he was building this case that the differences were too deep, too fundamental for a single state.
Precisely. Making partition seem not just like a political demand, but almost a cultural inevitability in the eyes of his supporters.
Okay, so if the goal was this separate nation, Pakistan, what was the vision for it? What kind of state did Jinnah and the League leadership actually imagine?
Well, according to the sources we have, the vision they promoted was for a modern, democratic, constitutional state. There was a stated emphasis on the rule of law, equal citizenship for all, and even socio-cultural and religious pluralism. They claimed no tolerance for religious extremism.
So not a purely religious state.
Jinnah himself was very clear on that repeatedly. He famously said, Pakistan is not going to be a theocratic state to be ruled by priests with a divine mission.
And that famous speech he gave right after partition, August 11th, 1947.
Yes, to the Constituent Assembly of Pakistan. That's seen as a key statement. He said, "You are free to go to your temples, you are free to go to your mosques, or to any other place of worship. You may belong to any religion or caste or creed that has nothing to do with the business of the state."
That sounds quite secular, quite inclusive.
That's certainly how it's often interpreted, as laying out an intended foundation for a secular state.
But it's important to remember, this idea of a separate Pakistan wasn't universally popular among all Muslims in India at the time, was it?
Not at all. It was far from unanimous. You had groups like the All India Azad Muslim Conference. These were nationalist Muslims who strongly believed in and fought for a united, independent India.
And there were others too.
Yes, the Coxar movement, led by Inayatullah Khan Mashriqi, they actively opposed partition, wanted a united country. Their membership was even open to non-Muslims.
And sadly, faced violence for their stance.
Tragically, yes. Some were killed by police in 1940. Then you had major figures like Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, the frontier Gandhi, who was staunchly against partition, and even many influential Islamic scholars, the Deobandi ulema. They weren't convinced by the two-nation theory either. Many Islamic political parties, in fact, strongly opposed creating a separate Muslim state.
So it's really complex. The support for partition wasn't monolithic.
Not by any means. And some sources argue that the push for Pakistan was largely driven by an elite group of Muslims, maybe not fully reflecting the views of the common man, so to speak. And that debate about Jinnah's August 47 speech. Was it his true vision all along? Or was it maybe a pragmatic move at that specific violent moment of partition to try and protect minorities? Historians still discuss that. It shows how we keep reinterpreting these figures.
So when we look back at this day of deliverance, it really does stand out as a crucial turning point, doesn't it?
Absolutely. A real inflection point.
It shows how the political situation back then, the elections, the war starting, mixed with these deep anxieties about culture and community. How all that just completely changed the conversation. It helped cement that idea of a separate nation in many people's minds and, well, change the map forever.
It really does highlight how different strategies, different visions for what India should be just collided. And the Day of Deliverance was one flashpoint in that collision that ultimately led towards partition. And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it, about how national identities get shaped in these moments of crisis and political struggle. And what are the echoes of those choices made decades ago that we still live with today?